Evan Witte, Director of Business Development at Battery Ventures, a 37-year-old firm with a global presence. Evan joined Battery Ventures in 2020, working to build the firm's business development practice through which Battery works closely with developers, technologists, and product management executives across cloud-native and innovative Fortune 500 corporations. Previously, he worked as a business development manager at Intel and has also co-founded two companies, Cursive Labs, a San Diego tech incubator, and Spoutable, an online advertising company. Please welcome to the keynote virtual stage, Evan. How you doing, Evan?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being
Wish
here.
I could be there in person tonight, but we've got a 6-month-old and then some high-risk people in the household. So fortunately, with the lack of travel, I've been able to stay home and make every single one of his bedtime. So I'm trying to keep that trend as much as I can for as long as possible. But kind of starting out, I'll give a little bit of a background on kind of myself and kind of a story into why I have a pretty strong belief that startups will end up being remote or more remote or kind of hybrid moving forward into the future. And then some ways in which I think that actually benefits cities like Bend as well. And I am located here in Bend. I had a startup studio, as mentioned, actually in San Diego. And that was after a company I was at went through the whole IPO process and then private equity after that portion. And one of the things that happened when we were raising money out of San Diego, which is a decent startup community and decent market, was we had multiple investors come to us and say, hey, it's great that you're raising a $3 million seed round. You should move to San Francisco and we'll give you double or 3x, but you need to move. And that was, I think, something that still happened, pre-pandemic. I think there's a bit of a shift in that. And some kind of data to back that up. But that was one of the things that really kind of resonated with me initially. And I think there are, with all the unfortunate things that have happened throughout 2020 and with the pandemic and a lot of people that are severely impacted, I do think there are hopefully some positives come out of it and some unique opportunities for startups and cities like Bend as well. I myself actually, after doing the whole startup studio, was lucky enough to work at a fully remote organization. So it actually is a portfolio company within Battery called Envision. I joined them when they were maybe about 150 people or so. And when I left, they were about 1,000 and 100% remote. So they had some shared WeWorks around the world, but no office leases, nothing of that nature whatsoever. And had a handful of people actually based in Bend, kind of at the tail end when I was there. So that's kind of the little bit of a background to myself. Battery itself, for those of you that know, my guess is a bunch that do not. Battery is a venture capital company that operates mainly out of offices in London, Boston, San Francisco, and Israel, and invests kind of throughout the world for the most part, and throughout stages. So everything from seed to somewhat unique for some VCs, we actually have a private equity arm as well. Our most recent fund was Fund 13 that we raised last year, at the beginning of last year, which was a $2 billion fund that's getting put to work. And then we just announced, I think about a week or two ago, that we actually raised a $400 million round for investing in existing portfolio companies. So that's kind of a background to Battery. One of the really awesome things that I've loved is when I was interviewing with them, finding out that they actually invested in a local Bend company as well. So Texoff 3D, which is awesome, and super excited to be able to partner with them as well. So looking at kind of the traditional VC model, and one of the things that I think is really going on and that we're seeing is there's a pretty significant shift away from what people would consider traditional innovation hubs, right? So you look back in Q1 of 2018, roughly 80% of the VC money went to 4 states, pretty limited. And San Francisco itself, or the Bay Area, I think got 6.4 billion of that, while the whole Pacific Northwest, which they looped into Washington, Oregon, all the way out to Montana and Idaho, only raised about 370 million. And so that shift is definitely, was there, and it was a high concentration in a handful of markets. Recently, Silicon Valley Bank, who does a ton of stuff within the startup community, put out a report called The State of the Market, came out a few weeks ago as well. And they're seeing a pretty significant shift away from some of those traditional hubs. So, the Bay Area, Boston, New York, into what they consider kind of non-core metros. and even a move into some of the suburban areas there, and a pretty big belief that that is going to continue to change and happen. And so my hope is that is a benefit for Bend itself as well. I think there are some challenges here with, affordable housing and pieces of that. But as you look at that exodus from some of these kind of traditional markets, that probably is one of the factors why home prices have gone up, 15% here, and inventory is down, I think, over 30. But one of the things that also is happening, or stats kind of in the San Francisco area, is that the Bay Area has seen its largest single kind of year drop in new tech workers going down in there. So they're still at a net positive of, people within the tech industry moving to the Bay Area, but they're down, roughly 30 or 40% year over year. And so that provides a unique opportunity for startups to start considering locations elsewhere. And even within the battery portfolio, there's a few unique investments that we've made over the last 5 years that I think highlight trends outside of the traditional market. So we were fortunate enough to invest in a company called MX that does financial services or fintech stuff based out of Utah, as well as a company called StockX that does basically verified purchases for sneakers and kind of a resale market for that as well, based out of Michigan. And so I think even traditional VCs and large VCs, that raise quote unquote mega funds that are over $500 million are starting to look outside of the traditional core markets themselves. If you look at venture capital, I think this is a unique lens for anyone that's looking at starting a business today or looking at raising money from the venture community. Traditionally, I think VCs looked at specific markets for a handful of reasons. There was a consolidation of talent. There was a consolidation of the customer base. The ability to build a $30 or $50 million SaaS company in the Bay Area is pretty easy if you just start selling to your local neighbors throughout the Bay Area. And then even the concept of, you talk to some of the general partners, at Battery or other venture capital companies, the perspective of even boards, right? If they have to be on a board at a company that they invest in down in, Kansas City, another one down in Nashville, one up in Bend, one out in Boise, that is travel time for all of them. And it wasn't until COVID that I think most of the venture capital community, and especially some of those general partners, really started to embrace the remote nature of aspects. And if you talk to a lot of those people now today, very few of them want to go back to every quarter traveling to every startup and going to every board meeting in person. There's a ton of lost efficiencies out of that. So I think that little things like that even open up the world for how venture communities are looking at quote unquote, non-traditional markets, or, as some people would maybe consider secondary markets, which I think Bend has a very, aggressive and strong talent pool. So hopefully that's not viewed that way. But the other thing that I think is a unique aspect for anyone that's starting a business now is the threshold to starting a business remotely is so much lower. It used to be that there was a harder trust level in being able to, hire people remotely, or, hey, I'm going to work at this company that has no office. That model's broken down for a large number of tech workers, myself included, making that jump to kind of being remote. I think the advantage that hopefully Ben can take advantage of is we've got such a beautiful city, unique access to things on the outside, outdoors, and I think a vibrant community that's wanting people to come in. And my hope is that there's going to be a strong set of startups that are getting formed here now, or existing ones that are going to expand, that can take advantage of that more kind of hybrid model. Because I think when we look at tech companies specifically, that hybrid model is really here to stay. Even looking at non kind of tech companies, I was recently talking to a CTO for a large national bank out of New York. And they have an office there of, 200, 300 people. And they were trying to figure out what they do post-COVID, because 90% of those people have left, and they don't believe 90% of those people will ever come back. And so that shift to digital and that shift to kind of this hybrid remote model is going to continue to stay. The one thing I will say for anyone that's starting a business, or even, people that have, startups here or companies that are beyond kind of the earlier stages, there is definitely an issue kind of in the remote nature as well. Talent is going to continue to get harder for a lot of people. Talking or looking at San Diego, you had companies like Intuit or ServiceNow And if you were an engineer or product management, those were great places to work. And if you wanted to live in San Diego, that was kind of the staples of where you go. Since the remote models have opened up for a lot of companies, you have a ton of hiring, VPs of engineering or VPs of product at those types of companies in San Diego that are having a challenge retaining people because you now have Amazon or Facebook or anyone else being able to hire people kind of all around the world. And so while I think that's a vibrant thing for Bend in general, I think that is also going to be a challenge that a lot of startups are going to have to handle. And if you're hiring remote, you're basically competing with a whole different set of companies as well. And even if you're hiring locally in Bend, that realization that top level product designers, development talent here probably are getting knocked on from companies that are not based in Bend that sometimes have different incentive models that they can provide to those individuals. Now, one of the other things I do think is unique for kind of hopefully everyone here is how to kind of take remote and turn it into your superpower. When I was at Envision, that was one of the things that we always kind of touted was a remote structure allowed us to have a really strong kind of superpower in that we could hire talent from anywhere around the world. People, as their lives changed and needed to move locations, didn't need to move jobs. So talent retention became a very big benefit. If you build that as a core muscle too, it also becomes a thing for market proximity or customer kind of empathy. We used to do something at Envision where we had all employees across the company had a monthly budget for what they called delicious empathy. Essentially, we had a budget where we could take out any customer once a month and go have lunch. And that was something that, whether you were in Montana or Texas or Colorado, employees were able to be in front of customers on a really, regular basis. It helped us create a tight bond with customers themselves, but it also gave people that were maybe not customer facing in customer success or sales the ability to start to learn those customers. They got an empathy for the people that they were building products for, whether it was an engineer or whether it was an admin. And then the other thing within the remote aspect that I think is unique, we have this timing that, unfortunately was thrust upon us with COVID, but we have this unique timing where everybody is in this remote mindset as well. We're all used to Zoom and screens of this nature already now. And so you have people that traditionally say we're in San Francisco as they were, looking for meetups and all these other activities that kind of had their own little community there. Those people aren't having those physical events now. And so they're searching for new ways of connecting to people. And so one of the stories I was telling to Brian actually recently is, we host a bunch of virtual wine happy hours for our community that help us with investments and introductions and stuff like that. And we were able to get, basically VPs of product or digital at companies like Disney out of, New York, McDonald's out of Chicago, and Atlassian out of San Francisco, and bring those people into a room and have a discussion about the future of product and digital and how they're building products, how are they managing teams. Those types of discussions pre-COVID were really hard to have. They happened in local communities, and the people that were geographically kind of dispersed didn't necessarily have that sharing of perspectives. And so I think for anyone that's within Bend and you're looking at, raising money, you're looking at finding your advisor groups, you're looking at creating that network, I really encourage you at this unique time to look as far or as wide as you want and find those kind of experts regardless of location. There is definitely an appetite for that, and people are kind of searching for new ways of having that community really be close to them. And then one of the kind of last things I'll touch on the community side as well. You look at that kind of piece of everyone having those microcosms, and one of the strengths that I think Silicon Valley has had historically for a long time is everything was there, right? So, if I was a VP of engineering, I could just go walk down and have coffee. I could go walk down to an office neighboring. That level of convenience or ease was something that everyone kind of looked at when they were making authentic connections or, finding people to invest in, or just being even willing to take a call and have help. What is convenient now is this, and I think as I talk to a lot of people in the engineering product and, development space, that is going to continue to be there for quite a long time. The desire of people in San Francisco or New York or Boston to go commute, to have coffee, to go meet somebody, they don't want to go back to that model. And so my hope is that communities and people here that are starting businesses, or working throughout Bend, that becomes something that can become a bit of our superpower as well. Building communities not only within our local community, but pulling people out externally as well. The last thing I'll mention, on the venture side, kind of pulling it back to battery, we had a company that we were looking at investing in recently, and one of the analysts went to one of our general partners, and during that discussion was very bullish on the fact that, hey, guess what? This company is based in Boston. It's going to be great for all these reasons. They really viewed it as a positive factor. And I distinctly remember our general partner, kind of almost reprimanding that individual in a way where it's like, that should have absolutely no bearing on whether it's a company that we want to invest in. It shouldn't even be listed down as a piece of the criteria. And I think that's a mental shift that I've seen kind of on the venture side of the house, of location becoming more of an agnostic thing. So looking at the other people that we're pitching here today, my hope is that, whether it's the larger funds like Battery, making investments in, TechSoft 3D and others, or even, the smaller venture communities that are externally, being able to actually have a bit more money come into Oregon. And, my hope is that comes and coincides with some of the great venture and kind of seed firms and angels that are already here, to really basically provide some additional accelerant to Oregon in general, but specifically Bend, since this is where I call home. So hopefully with that, this was valuable and something you got some nugget out of it. I'd love to open it up for more of a kind of open discussion and make sure I'm hitting the points that are relevant to everyone here tonight.
Thanks, Evan. This is just great. Yeah, please. We already have one question. Yes.
Nice.
Does your company, or do you guys have like a standard that you pay people to not come in, like cover a desk space or video, microphone, all that stuff?
Do you have a standard that you pay, like a stay-at-home budget? So to cover, since people are not being paid to be in an office, what is the standard?
Yeah, I mean, so prior to even Battery, I worked at a company that was based in the Bay Area, and I was remote. And, so one of the things they always had, like the standard startup in the Bay Area, was unlimited coffee, you had bubble water, you had snacks, you had everything that was there. I think most companies are finding ways of shifting that budget to people, whether it's, office setups or things like that. Battery was, very generous to all of its employees, thinking about, hey, guess what? Everyone has a work from home setup, and most of us were not built for that. Since especially Battery, it was traditionally in offices. So a lot of people were working from a laptop, from a, standing up on their kitchen counter or whatever that was. So we definitely got a budget to go buy chairs and desks and the stuff that will make us efficient long-term in kind of a remote model. I think the other thing that, looking at startups, that shifting of all the stuff that you were buying, whether it was coffee or stuff of that nature, for your employees and kind of those perks, that can change in a different model. So Battery ships us gifts basically once a month, and it's little stuff, coffee from, back from Boston, that's an employee's favorite coffee, or I think we just got like a coffee cake and muffins from a place in Tennessee. So I think there's ways of doing that is really important to keep that culture in a remote kind of model.
Oh, I just
hopefully that answers the question for you.
Did that answer your question? Yeah, that's lovely. I want to get in on the muffin delivery. That sounds so nice. Any other questions?
They're good, except for my wife,
Shannon,
who's gluten-free, so she stares at me evilly.
Yes, we have one in the theater, huh?
We have one in the theater.
Great.
Yeah, it was a nice presentation. Thank you. Question about Battery. You talked a lot about the stuff you invest in. It sounds really tech heavy. Is it specifically tech, or do you do stuff outside of tech?
Yeah, so Battery is historically kind of been a third. So a third is going into kind of more private equity stuff, so lower growth, still rooted in technology. But an example of that is we had an investment that recently spun out called WebPT that basically did software management for physical therapist offices. So think of billing, payment, all of those types of things. Another third of our stuff goes very traditionally to kind of enterprise IT. So B2B software, whether that's for developers, designers, things of that nature. So helping other companies build products and build experiences. And then another third goes to B2C type things. So more consumer centric. So historic investments are things like Wayfair or StockX or even some gaming companies as well.
I'm waiting for the next question to be, are you hiring at Battery? Aaron, hit me.
Elise wants to know how you keep up a culture in remote working space.
So elaborating on how you keep up a culture in a remote working space, company culture.
Yeah, so one other unique thing that we just did, so Battery used to have a annual conference that they do. So bring all the employees together in Boston or San Francisco or something like that. And one of the things that they did for all new employees, so people like myself, was we get a budget to take out a team for coffee or lunch, and we basically had a fixed budget, and we could go pick whatever activity we wanted to go do. And so it was a way of us, inspiring new employees to find something that was common. We actually just decided to do the same thing remote. So we've got over the next, call it 3 quarters, all the new people are hosting 10-person virtual sessions. So we've got somebody who's hosting an e-game, basically through Zoom. You're doing Formula One racing, on the computer. I'm hosting a Hot Ones hot sauce lunch tasting. So we're shipping out hot sauce to, the 10 people that are joining. And I think there's ways of doing that can either have a budget to them or not. It can be as simple as, shipping a mug to everyone and, having a coffee hour on Fridays. I think that's one important piece. The other, I'd say, flip side is talking. I think a few people mentioned fatigue as well. I was just talking to Intuit a few weeks ago, and their CTO had a very strong belief that there was a high level of burnout that was approaching engineering teams and product teams and things like that. And so they actually instated, I think it's from 1 to 3 every day. There's 0 meetings allowed. It doesn't mean you can't work, but there are no meetings. And the CTO actually gets a report on a weekly basis of whoever is creating meetings and how many meetings they have and how long those are taking. And so I think little things like that are ways to make sure that people don't get fully burnt out. Because especially working from home, it's easy to just stay here for forever and forget that there's a world outside, or even forget to stand or eat. Yeah.
You need the rising wild cards. Aaron.
Yeah.
When you're spread across the U.S. or worldwide, how do you decide how to pay someone from where?
Oh, that's a great question. When you are spread all over the country, how do you decide your pay scale for your employees?
I think Battery is taking the approach of location. They kind of go to the highest common denominator, so somewhat fortunate.
Good man.
At prior roles, and like you think of Envision, they didn't think of geolocation as a bonus or a negative, right? So if you were in San Francisco, they didn't give you an incentive to be there. And then if you decided you started to work when you were in the Bay Area and you decided to move to Montana, they didn't de-incentivize you. Personal opinion, I think that is a great model. It allows the flexibility of people to decide what is important in their life, whether places that have a higher affordability are a benefit to them or not, and be able to subsequently kind of pocket that money. My hope is that there isn't too much of a hit that larger companies, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or anyone else, start to ding people for being based in cities that have a lower affordability aspect to them.
Do they advise their companies?
Do you advise companies like that on this? Do you advise your companies?
Yes, I mean, I don't make too many advice aspects to our portfolio company on that stuff, but personally, yeah, I think that's a very good model. I think there's also, there's a level of kind of transparency and honesty that comes with that. And I think you have a trend for a lot of companies to be a little bit more transparent with what their pay structures are. And I'm a personal believer of that piece as well.
Me too.
So I think to me, those kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, me too.
It
Thank
also
you.
helps with diversity as well, right?
Yeah.
If you're open about location, you should be open about all the other aspects to
Yes.
be more inclusive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions tonight for Evan? Nobody's going to ask Evan if he's hiring. You're going to make me do it. Evan, Roger. Why did you pick Bend, Evan?
Yeah, so Bend was not on my list at all, probably 10 years ago. I picked Bend based off of my family or parents came down here, and this is where they wanted to retire. And my wife and I were, just lucky enough, 7 years ago, to decide to come travel with them and help them find a place to kind of, eventually long-term kind of become their retirement home. And we absolutely fell in love with it. I think for me, it reminded me very much of San Diego without the traffic, with a community that was, I'd say, very vibrant in restaurants, and bars, and the startup community, and everything else. And that's been the piece that's kind of retained me here throughout all of that, and kind of fell in love with it from that perspective. I also think that although I'm at a VC firm that has very large funds that they're operating with, if I wasn't here, I would probably end up having my own startup studio or startup again that would be focused a little bit more on lifestyle, right? I personally don't have the desire to, start a $1 billion company or anything of that nature. And I felt like Bend was a place that provided a very beautiful balance of work and enjoyment and community, and a level of intrigue that still happened. You have extremely intelligent people here. And people that are doing some very unique things. And to me, that was another aspect of it as well. Whether it was within my field or, even looking at the dental stuff, like I thought that's incredible. And hearing that type of discussion is something that I think will keep me here for forever.
Yeah, it either works really well for you or you get kicked right out. That seems to be the trend here. I agree with you, and thank you for saying it so well. It is a lovely place, and there is a lot of opportunity here. We really are moving and shaking. Any last questions for Evan? Any last questions for Evan? Aaron, anybody on the? Will you join us at a future Pub Talk in person?
I would absolutely love to.
Oh, good.
My hope is that I can join in person, and my hope is that Battery makes more investments here.
Amazing.
As well. So
amazing. Well, we've got a little event coming up in October called Bend Venture Conference that we really want to also invite you to, Evan. We have a mug. This is our tradition. I don't have it in person. This is like so sad. We have a ginormous glass mug for you, and this is our tradition at EDCO. So the next time we see you in person, we'll get you the mug. You can bring it to future Pub Talks. We'll give you a fill. It's like 4 beers in one.
Perfect.
But thank you so much. We appreciate your insights. It's just great to have you here. And it feels like he's here. This is great. Yeah. You're very skilled on Zoom.
I spend entirely too much time on it. So,
well, you're doing great. And
thank you so much for having me. And then to everyone that's in the audience or remote, look forward to connecting on LinkedIn. Reach out at any point in time. Anything I can do to help. Always available for people locally.
Thanks, Evan. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.